As I mentioned earlier, we've got Debbie Ellison joining us to talk about Gen Z. The topic, we've gotten a lot of feedback through the year on things we want to talk about in terms of what's next. This is one of the top ones for a lot of reasons. I think we've got a lot of people who said, I am Gen Z, I want to learn more about where I fit. We've got people marketing to Gen Z. We've got people who are parents of Gen Z. But the data shows out that no matter where you are on that spectrum, sometimes what Gen Z says and what they do, data proves can be two different things. So it's going to be great to hear Debbie break that down a bit and give us some navigation of that. So Debbie, over to you in London.
Thank you, John. Well, we know that Gen Zers are activists, caring about workers' rights, the climate, equity, and inclusion. But in contrast, sales in fast fashion have doubled from 100 to 200 billion units a year. Last year, the world dumped nearly 54 million tons of e-waste, and the fast food market is likely to surpass nearly $1 trillion by the end of 2028. So there's a paradox between what Gen Zers say they care about and currently how they buy. Well, why should you even care? Well, because last year, Gen Z became the largest demographic globally, constituting 32% of the world's population, and already now have a spending power of $143 billion. And they're influencing what others around them spend too. 93% of parents say that their Gen Zers tell them how they should spend and what they should buy. And of course, Gen Z dominate online spending more so than any other generation, and they are also entering adulthood, so reportedly starting to spend their own money. I have a 25-year-old daughter at the upper echelons of Gen Z and a 17-year-old son. So I say reportedly spending their own money because I'm not sure that's exactly true of my two quite yet. Yes, I'm publicly throwing shade. Really. Understanding Gen Z's shopping behavior, but most importantly, what they value, gives us an insight into this already powerful generation and what's to come for the future of brands and shopper. Earlier this year, I led a major global study into Gen Z to shed light on the shape and the power of our future shopper in a bid to help brands understand the role they need to play with this generation. We surveyed over 2,500 Gen Zers in 5 cities worldwide: Shenzhen, Mumbai, Lagos, Houston, and Manchester. And what we discovered was a distinct paradox between conscience and commerce.
Meet one of today's most powerful consumer forces, $149 billion of buying power. Over the next 10 years, Gen Z will reshape commerce as we know it. Born after 1996, our future shoppers now have their own cash to spend. More progressive, diverse, educated than previous generations. Still young, but wise beyond their years. We spoke to 2,500 Gen Zers across 5 markets, with the fastest growing economies and largest Gen Z populations. And we found out who Gen Z really are, what they value, and how they spend. Most say they prefer brands that align with their values. But when it comes to making the final decision to buy, the story gets complicated. And it was similar across other categories, like food and drink and technology. We met a generation seemingly full of contradictions between what they say and what they do. Discover more at genzparadox.com.
Here are 6 key takeouts from the research to help brands win with this generation as they hurtle towards adulthood. Firstly, brands need to help Gen Z close this gap. Although the Gen Zers we spoke to think that they buy in line with their values, across all cities, their behaviour suggests that they aren't doing so on a frequent basis. And of course, this value action gap isn't a new phenomenon, but this gap is widest for Gen Z. They hold stronger social values than any other generation, but feel compelled to consume in a way that doesn't align with those values. So brands need to close this gap between offering value, such as quality, convenience, and value for money, and demonstrating values like caring for the environment and supporting gender representation, racial equity, and workers' rights. We call it V-squared thinking. Secondly, Gen Z is not one homogenous group. Our research showed that participants in Shenzhen, Mumbai, and Lagos were exhibiting different value-led behaviours than others such as in Manchester and Euston. The latter being much more active in action, for instance, buying more vintage clothes and eating less meat, but being much more cautious and sceptical as to whether brands are doing the right thing. Whereas Gen Zers in Mumbai and Lagos were much more trusting of brands. Brands need to understand the different Gen Z communities better to create more meaningful, relevant, and authentic values-driven experiences for them. Gen Z have purchasing power, but they have huge social influence too. Gen Z is pegged as the most hyper-connected generation. 66% of Gen Zers use more than one internet-connected device at a time and spends over 11 hours a day online. When do they sleep? Brands can't be fearful of and become debilitated by this power. Of course, cancel culture is a phenomenon where brands can be ostracized from Gen Z's social circle, but we think that brands can harness this power for good. We call it crush culture. Iman, one of our favorite Gen Zers in Houston, explains it perfectly.
I just feel like cancel culture is such a big part of like everyday society right now. So if the brand is like loved by everyone, that is definitely gonna be like, okay, as a part of Gen Z, like I wanna shop there. But if it's a brand that has like some weird stance on a social issue, or the owner made some crazy comments, or they got caught doing something like terrible, we'd be like, no, we don't wear that anymore.
Gen Zers rely on their social media feeds to make their minds up. 75% of our Gen Zers say they'll switch from a brand that gets negative PR.
If anyone is in support of anything positive socially, we're like, yes, we'll buy all the bags. And I think that's a good part of our generation too. Because if you're able to convince us that like you're the best, we're like, all right, everyone, we'll sell them out right now. Like we're on Twitter talking about it, we're on Instagram waiting, for your product release. We're gonna buy everything up because, we associate and relate to the issues you stand for.
Gen Zs have the clout and will sell your brand for you, but you need to be in their feeds and communicate your values at every opportunity.
If you are not visible on social media, you may never be visible. It's that or nothing.
Tap in at genzparadox.com.
Be purposeful at all points of purchase. Gen Z are not big into in-depth research. My son Devon told me last week that he'll just check his socials before buying his Christmas presents. I'm not sure what that's going to mean for me. In fact, 97% of Gen Zers learn about new products from social media. So you need to make your values known at every touch point, including at the digital shelf. Add value-driven filters to site search results, communicate purpose through your social feeds, product descriptions, images, and copy, and bring them to life on pack and on shelf. Be authentic with your brand purpose. Crush culture is real. Gen Z can see through inauthenticity, so your best bet is to ensure that you live your values behind the screen as much as in front of it. Whilst they can be forgiving, they need to see that your brand's purposeful North Star has got rigor and robustness in strategy and action. And finally, you need to be convenient. Gen Zers are expecting your brand to be at their fingertips, from delivery services to instant gratification, in-moment purchases, and social interactions. One respondent from Manchester said, I know Amazon isn't the best and I try to limit what I buy from them, but sometimes I do need things quickly and I know I can trust them to get it to me the next day. Gen Z want to know what your brand stands for in the moment that matters for them. You might think that they want it all, and quite frankly, they do, and they're determined to get it. Together, we must make the brand, customer, and commerce experience better and fast close that value action gap, or quite frankly, somebody else will. Let's send you back to Kansas City. Over to you, John.
Thanks, Debbie. First of all, how's London today?
Cold.
Cold? I knew it. I was saying that earlier. I was just guessing. It just seems like a cold time in London right now. I'm just guessing, but cold here in KC too. But first of all, thank you for being with us, and a great talk. I don't know if you heard it earlier, but I mentioned I have 3 daughters that are all Gen Z. And I wanted to ask you, they're all been through Gen Z has been through so much turbulence and change in the world, and where they're headed with brands, just from personal experience, I can tell they're so demanding of brands. And I think sometimes that's really good. Sometimes that confuses marketers, or they get a bad reputation for being that demanding. I think it comes from what they've seen, but I want to get your insights, both as a father, as a marketer, and just somebody who's curious about that demanding reputation.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think one of the questions I'd love our clients and our people to ask me is, why are Gen Z so demanding? And you've got it spot on, John. It can feel like Gen Z want the world on a stick,
right.
And therefore it can become easy to ignore them. But it's more because, as you were saying, they've grown up at a time that has seen some of the biggest societal shifts in world events in history, from wars, terrorism, political leaders being appointed who don't align with their values, the pandemic, and of course, the very difficult current economic climate that we see ourselves in today. But in turn, they've seen us and they've seen you build your brand and manage to influence people at scale. And now they're just demanding that you do some good with that power. And what we've seen from the research is that they'll be your biggest hype squad and they want us and you to win. Yeah. So the question is, what are we waiting for?
Yeah, thank you, Debbie. That helps on all levels. Thank you for joining us, Debbie. Have a great rest of your evening there, and we'll see you in the follow-up as well. So thanks, Deb.